Welcome to the world of daily life stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy listening. The encounter. Maya was exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that seeped deep into her bones after an endless 10-hour shift at the diner where she worked. It was the kind of day where even her feet seemed to ache in defiance. The sun was just starting to dip into the horizon, streaking the sky in hues of amber and pink. But all Maya could think about was getting home to a hot bath and a quiet evening. She pulled into the crowded supermarket parking lot, needing a few essentials, before calling it a night. The lot was overflowing, cars darting from one lane to another like desperate predators hunting for a parking space. Maya sighed, gripping the steering wheel tighter as she carefully navigated through the chaos. After what felt like forever, her luck finally turned. A spot near the entrance opened up, an absolute goldmine on a busy Saturday evening. Maya smiled to herself as she smoothly steered her old sedan into the spot. She turned off the ignition, sat for a moment to gather her thoughts, and grabbed her purse from the passenger seat. It was just a trip for bread, milk, and a few snacks, she reminded herself. But as she reached for the car door handle, the sharp screech of tires made her freeze mid-motion. A large white SUV swerved aggressively into the adjacent spot, its tires grinding to a halt just inches away from her car. For a moment, Maya sat stunned, her heartbeat quickening. Her first instinct was to check if she'd done something wrong. Had she misjudged her parking? But no. She was perfectly aligned within the lines. Her gaze shifted to the SUV. Behind the wheel sat a middle-aged white man, his features sharp and his face flushed with what looked like immediate hostility. The man rolled down his window with such force it was as though the button had offended him. He pointed a finger toward her car, his voice slicing through the air like a knife. "That spot was mine," he barked, the anger in his tone completely out of proportion to the situation. Maya blinked, momentarily caught off guard. She tried to process his words. His? There had been no sign of him waiting. She would have noticed. "I'm sorry," she called out, her voice steady but polite. "I didn't see anyone waiting here." Her explanation, calm and genuine, seemed to have the opposite effect. The man's face twisted into something ugly, his eyes narrowing as if Maya's very presence was a personal insult. In one swift motion, he flung his car door open and climbed out, marching toward her vehicle. Maya's pulse quickened as the man loomed closer, his footsteps heavy against the pavement. She instinctively locked her car doors. What is his problem? She wondered. For a second, she considered driving away, but something about his demeanor made her hesitate. The man stopped directly next to her car door, his shadow falling over the window. With his arms crossed, he leaned forward, his voice dripping with contempt. "Typical. You people always think you can just take whatever you want. No respect for others." Maya's chest tightened. She knew exactly what he meant by "you people." Those words stung more than they should have, heavy with implication and prejudice. A familiar knot of anger and hurt twisted in her stomach, but she swallowed it down. She'd faced subtle racism before, the kind wrapped in fake smiles and polite words, but this was something else. Brazen, unapologetic hatred. Taking a deep breath to calm herself, Maya cracked her window open just an inch, her voice still calm but firm. "Sir, I didn't see you waiting for this spot. If I had, I wouldn't have parked here." The man's face reddened further. He jabbed a finger toward her window, his words growing harsher. "Don't give me that attitude. I was right there. You think just because you don't want to look, you can pretend I wasn't? You people are all the same. Always taking, never giving a damn about anyone else." Maya's hands clenched the steering wheel tighter, her nails digging into the leather. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, "Stay calm, Maya. Don't let them pull you into their anger." She had always been taught to choose her battles wisely, to maintain her dignity even when it was being stripped away. But this man's words were not just cruel. They were venomous. Maya opened the car door slowly, stepping out with care to avoid any sudden escalation. She straightened her back, meeting his furious gaze with her own unwavering stare. "I don't want trouble, sir. It's just a parking spot." I apologized. "Can we leave it at that?" The man scoffed, his mouth twisting into a sneer. "An apology? Don't act all innocent. You people always pull this crap, pretending you're the victim. You're lucky I don't call someone to deal with you." The weight of his words settled over her like a suffocating blanket. Deal with you. As if she were some criminal who needed to be handled. Her heart pounded painfully in her chest, her fight-or-flight instinct screaming at her to walk away, to run. And yet, something within her rooted her feet to the ground. "I'm not going to argue with you," she said, keeping her voice even though her insides shook. "You're angry, I get it. But you need to back off." Instead of backing off, the man took a step closer, his face inches from hers. Maya could smell the faint tang of alcohol on his breath. His finger jabbed toward her chest, his tone now a low growl. "Don't you tell me what I need to do. You don't belong here anyway. People like you just..." Before he could finish, Maya's instinct for survival kicked in. She stepped back, putting space between them, her pulse a roar in her ears. Around them, a few bystanders had paused to watch, their faces a mixture of curiosity and unease. Nobody stepped forward. Nobody said a word. "Stop," Maya warned, her voice sharper now. "You're crossing a line." Her words only seemed to embolden him. The man's jaw clenched, his hands balling into fists as his face turned a shade of crimson. And then it happened, swift and sudden, like a snake strike. The man's palm shot forward and slapped her across the face. The impact was jarring, sending Maya's head to the side as pain bloomed hot across her cheek. For a split second, the world went silent. Her vision blurred at the edges, her ears ringing as she processed what had just happened. A slap. He had slapped her. The man took a step back, his smug expression one of victory, as if his actions had somehow justified his anger. He sneered at her, his eyes glittering with malice. That moment changed something in Maya. Years of biting her tongue. Years of enduring sideways glances, whispered words, and outright insults. Years of trying to shrink herself to make others more comfortable. It all came crashing to the surface in a wave of defiance that she couldn't ignore. Maya lifted her head slowly, turning to face him with a look that made his smug smile falter. The burn in her cheek was nothing compared to the fire that now lit behind her eyes. Before she knew what she was doing, her arm shot up, and her palm connected with his face in a slap that echoed across the parking lot. The man stumbled back, his expression frozen in shock. His hand flew to his cheek where Maya's palm had struck him, his eyes wide as though he couldn't comprehend what had just happened. For the first time, he looked small. Weak. Vulnerable. Around them, murmurs spread through the small crowd that had gathered. A few people gasped. Some lifted their phones, recording the scene. The man's mouth opened and closed, no words coming out. Maya stood tall, her chest heaving as she met his stunned gaze. "Don't you ever touch me again," she said, her voice steady and unshakable. The man said nothing. His eyes darted around, taking in the crowd as if suddenly realizing the consequences of his actions. Maya turned on her heel and walked toward the store entrance, her head held high. The pain in her cheek still throbbed, but it was nothing compared to the surge of pride swelling in her chest. For once, she hadn't shrunk. She hadn't stayed silent. And that was enough. The aftermath. The supermarket doors slid open with a faint hiss as Maya stepped inside, her heart still pounding like a drum echoing through her chest. Her cheek burned, the skin still stinging from the man's slap, but her emotions were blazing hotter. Her hands were trembling slightly, though she held her head high, her resolve firm. She grabbed a basket near the entrance, forcing herself to focus on the mundane task of shopping. Bread. Milk. A box of cereal. That was the plan. Simple, quiet, and ordinary. But the moment replayed in her mind on a relentless loop, the man's sneering face, the way his hand had struck her as if she were less than human. And then her own response, her slap reverberating like a defiant shout against the injustice. The store was buzzing with life, mothers wrangling toddlers into carts, couples debating what to make for dinner, employees stacking shelves. To everyone else, it was just another Saturday evening. But to Maya, the weight of what had happened clung to her shoulders like an invisible anchor. Did I do the right thing? She wondered, her thoughts wrestling with one another. Part of her still seethed with indignation. How dare he? How dare anyone think they could put their hands on her and get away with it? But another part of her whispered doubt, what will people think? Will they blame me for fighting back? She could still feel the eyes of the small crowd outside, their murmurs of shock and curiosity. Some had pulled out their phones. Had they been recording? What if someone posted the video online? Would she become the angry black woman, painted as the villain while the man played the victim? The thought made her chest tighten. As she stood in the dairy aisle, staring at rows of milk cartons, Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and glanced at the screen. Her best friend, Jasmine, was calling. Maya hesitated for a second before answering. Hey, Jazz. Maya. Are you okay? Jasmine's voice came through loud and clear, full of worry and urgency. Where are you? Maya blinked. What? I'm fine. I'm just at the store. I just got a message from Andre. He said there's a video going around of some guy attacking a woman in a parking lot, and Jasmine's voice trailed off. Wait. Is that you? Maya's stomach dropped. What? A video? Yeah, Jasmine replied. I haven't seen it yet, but Andre said it's starting to spread. He didn't even realize it was you until someone mentioned the diner uniform. Maya closed her eyes briefly, exhaling a slow breath. She had seen it coming, but the reality of it still hit hard. The moment she had slapped the man, the phones had come out. People loved their drama. Jasmine's voice softened. Maya, what happened? Maya shifted the phone to her other ear, speaking quietly as she leaned against the shelves. It's complicated. Some man was yelling at me over a parking space. Then he said some awful things. And then, she paused, her throat tightening. He slapped me, Jazz. There was a beat of silence on the other end of the line. He what? Jasmine's tone was sharp now, furious. Maya continued, her voice quieter. I slapped him back. I couldn't just let him do that to me. I didn't even think, I just reacted. You were defending yourself. Jasmine insisted, her voice firm. Maya, you did nothing wrong. That man assaulted you. If anyone says otherwise, they're blind. Maya chewed on her bottom lip, the anger and hurt simmering beneath her skin. I don't know, Jazz. What if people twist this around? You know how they do. Jasmine's voice softened again. Listen to me. What you did was brave. You stood up for yourself when that man tried to humiliate you. Don't let anyone take that away from you, okay? Don't let his hate define who you are. Maya nodded, even though Jasmine couldn't see her. She appreciated her best friend's words, but the knot in her chest remained. Thanks, Jazz. I'll call you when I get home. After hanging up, Maya finished her shopping quickly, her focus scattered as she grabbed what she needed and headed for the checkout. By the time she walked back to her car, the parking lot had mostly emptied. The SUV was gone. The man was gone. But the heaviness of the incident still lingered. As Maya loaded her groceries into the trunk, she noticed a woman standing nearby, watching her. She looked to be in her 60s, her silver hair pulled back neatly, her hands gripping the strap of her purse. Maya's first instinct was to look away, to avoid another confrontation, but then the woman spoke. Excuse me, she said, her voice hesitant. I saw what happened earlier. Maya turned, blinking in surprise. Oh. The woman took a step closer, her expression soft. I just wanted to say. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. That man was awful. And I'm proud of you for standing up to him. Maya stared at her, caught off guard. You are? The woman nodded firmly. He had no right. And I could see how scared you were, but you didn't let him win. That takes courage, young lady. Maya felt her throat tighten, unexpected tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. She swallowed hard and nodded. Thank you, she said quietly. The woman offered a small smile before walking toward her own car. Maya watched her go, her words echoing in her mind. That takes courage. For the first time since the slap, Maya allowed herself to breathe. The woman's kindness, so simple yet so profound, was like a balm against the sting of the man's hatred. Not everyone was like him. Not everyone would look at her and see nothing but her skin. Maya climbed into her car and sat for a moment, her hands resting on the steering wheel. She thought about her mother, her father, and all the times they had told her to rise above hatred, to never let someone else's smallness make her feel small. She looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her cheek was still red, but there was something else in her eyes now, strength. Determination. I won't let him break me, she whispered to herself. With that, Maya started the engine and drove home, the knot in her chest loosening ever so slightly. The fallout. By the time Maya reached her small apartment, the sky had darkened, and the streetlights outside flickered to life. The familiar hum of the city at night greeted her, sirens in the distance, laughter from passing pedestrians, the rhythmic thump of bass from a nearby car. It was the sound of life moving on, indifferent to what had happened just hours earlier. As Maya carried her grocery bags up the stairs, her thoughts were still tangled. The weight of the man's slap lingered on her skin like an unwanted memory, and the woman's encouraging words replayed in her mind. That takes courage. It was strange how just a few kind words from a stranger could begin to chip away at the bitterness that had been building in her chest. Once inside, Maya set the bags on the counter and collapsed onto the couch, feeling the tension in her muscles begin to unravel. She stared at the ceiling for a moment before grabbing her phone, the screen lighting up with missed messages and notifications. The group chat with her friends was buzzing. Jasmine, girl, you're all over social media. I saw the video. Are you okay? Andre, that guy had it coming. Nobody messes with Maya. You handled yourself like a boss. Kira, the comments are wild. Some people are supporting you, but some are talking trash. Stay strong, Maya. You did nothing wrong. Maya hesitated before clicking on the link Jasmine had sent. It took her to a short video, shaky and grainy, clearly filmed on someone's phone. She pressed play, her heart sinking as the moment replayed on the small screen. The man shouting. The slap. The audible gasp from the crowd. And then Maya, her hand shooting up to slap him back, the force making his head jerk to the side. The video ended with murmurs from the onlookers as the man stumbled back, his expression of shock frozen in time. Maya closed her eyes and exhaled. She didn't want to see the comments, but curiosity got the better of her. Top comments. Good for her. He deserved that slap for putting his hands on her. Violence doesn't solve anything, but what was she supposed to do? Just stand there? Typical. People like her always escalate things. She did what anyone would do. Why is this even up for debate? If a woman can hit back, maybe we shouldn't be slapping women in the first place? The comments were a mess, a war of conflicting opinions. Some defended her, applauding her for standing up for herself. Others spewed hate, blaming her for fighting back, twisting the narrative to make her the aggressor. Maya set her phone down, her hands shaking. The reality hit her, this wasn't just a moment between her and that man anymore. It had become public. People she had never met, people who knew nothing about her life, were now dissecting her actions as if she were nothing more than a story for their entertainment. Her phone buzzed again. Jasmine. Hey, Maya said, answering the call. Girl, you okay? Jasmine asked softly, her tone gentle. I know you've probably seen the video by now. Yeah, Maya muttered. It's everywhere. Jasmine sighed on the other end. People are gonna talk. They always do. But you know what? Screw them. You defended yourself. That man thought he could hit you and walk away like you were nothing, and you showed him that you were something. Something he can't break. Maya stared at her hands, the faint redness from earlier still visible. I don't know, Jazz. What if people just see me as angry? As someone who overreacted? You're not angry, Maya. You're strong, Jasmine said firmly. Listen, what happened today wasn't just about you and that man. You stood up for every woman who's ever been cornered like that. Every person who's been made to feel small because of their skin, or their gender, or just who they are. You showed him that his hate has no power over you. Maya felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time they were different. Not tears of pain or anger, but of release. Of gratitude. I didn't want to let him win. And you didn't, Jasmine said softly. You won, Maya. Even if it doesn't feel like it yet. They talked for a little longer, Jasmine's words like a lifeline pulling Maya out of the dark waters of doubt. When they finally hung up, Maya felt lighter. She stood and walked to the bathroom, flipping on the light. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. Her cheek was still faintly red, but her eyes, those eyes were steady. Determined. There was no shame in them. Strong, she whispered to herself, repeating Jasmine's words. You're strong. The next morning, Maya woke up to a series of texts and missed calls. Her heart sank, expecting the worst, more fallout, more negativity. But as she scrolled through her messages, something surprising happened. There were messages from women she didn't even know. Lisa R., Instagram DM, I saw what happened to you in that video. You're so brave for standing up for yourself. Thank you for being a voice for the rest of us who've been afraid to fight back. Sharon T., Facebook, that slap you gave him? That wasn't just for you. That was for me, for my mother, for every woman who's ever been treated like she doesn't matter. You're incredible. Michaela, Twitter Maya, you're my hero. You didn't let that man's hate defeat you. Stay strong, Queen. Maya's fingers hovered over the keyboard, unsure how to respond. But as she read through message after message, her heart swelled. She realized something important, her story wasn't just hers anymore. That moment in the parking lot had become more than a confrontation. It had become a symbol. Maya sat at her small kitchen table, the sun streaming through the window as she sipped her coffee. Her phone buzzed again, a notification for an email. When she opened it, her eyes widened. Subject, would you share your story? The email was from a popular online news platform. They had seen the video and wanted to interview her, not just about the confrontation, but about her experience, her perspective, and what it felt like to stand up to racism and injustice. Maya's first instinct was to say no. To run. To stay small and quiet like she always had. But then she remembered the older woman in the parking lot, the kindness in her voice. She remembered Jasmine's words. You showed him that his hate has no power over you. Maya smiled faintly to herself, her hand steady as she typed out a response. Yes. I'd be happy to share my story. The spotlight. The email had sat in Maya's inbox for an hour before she summoned the courage to respond. Saying yes to an interview felt like opening a door she wasn't sure she wanted to walk through. What if they twisted her words? What if people attacked her even more? Doubt gnawed at her like an unwelcome guest, but in her heart, she knew why she had to do it. This wasn't just about her anymore. By the time she hit send, Maya felt the weight of her decision settle over her, but it wasn't crushing. Instead, it felt like resolve, like standing up straight after being pushed down. 2 days later, Maya sat nervously in a small cafe downtown, the hum of conversation and the scent of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. She had chosen this spot for the interview because it felt safe, familiar. She glanced at her reflection in the window beside her, a neat bun, soft makeup, and a plain blue blouse that made her feel confident yet understated. The journalist, a young woman named Natalie, arrived right on time. She was warm and approachable, with curly auburn hair and a calm demeanor that immediately put Maya at ease. "Thank you for meeting with me, Maya," Natalie said as they settled in with their drinks. "I really appreciate your willingness to share your story." Maya offered a small smile. "I wasn't sure at first, but I think it's time people hear the truth." Natalie nodded, her notepad poised but her eyes attentive. "Before we start, I want you to know that this is your space. Tell your story how you want it to be told. I'm not here to twist it, I just want people to hear your voice." Maya took a steadying breath, the words "your voice" resonating deeply. For so long, she had felt unheard, invisible. But now, people were listening. "So, let's start with that day. Can you walk me through what happened?" Maya recounted the events, starting from her long shift at the diner to pulling into that parking space. Her voice was steady, though her mind still recoiled at the memory of the man's face, his words like barbs lodged under her skin. "When he slapped me," she said softly, "it wasn't just about the pain. It was the way he looked at me, like I was nothing. Like I didn't matter. That slap was meant to put me in my place." Natalie's eyes reflected compassion. "And your response?" "You slapped him back." Maya met her gaze, her shoulders straightening. "I didn't think about it. It wasn't premeditated. I just reacted. But you know what? I don't regret it. That slap was my way of saying, you don't get to do that to me. I won't let you make me feel small." Natalie nodded, scribbling notes. "Some people would argue that violence isn't the answer. What would you say to them?" Maya considered this for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I don't believe in violence. I'm not proud that it came to that. But when someone crosses a line, when someone physically assaults you, what are you supposed to do? Stand there and let them win?" My slap wasn't about anger. It was about dignity." She paused, her voice stronger now. "I think people focus too much on my reaction. But what about his actions? Why are we always told to shrink ourselves in the face of injustice? Why is defending yourself somehow wrong?" Natalie put her pen down, visibly moved. "That's powerful, Maya. And you're right, there's a bigger conversation here." Maya nodded. "This wasn't just about me. There are women, black women especially, who go through this kind of disrespect every day. People who are silenced because they're afraid of how they'll be judged if they stand up for themselves. I'm tired of that. I won't be silent anymore." The interview wrapped up after an hour, and Maya felt lighter than she had in days. It was cathartic to speak her truth, to claim her story and share it on her terms. Natalie thanked her profusely, promising to send a draft of the article before it went live. As Maya walked out of the cafe, her phone buzzed with a call from Jasmine. "How did it go?" Jasmine asked eagerly. Maya smiled, letting the sunshine hit her face as she stepped onto the sidewalk. "It felt good. Scary, but good." "You did the right thing," Jasmine said. "People need to hear your story. It's going to inspire so many women, Maya. You don't even know." Maya's smile softened. "I hope so." The ripple effect. The article was published 2 days later under the headline, "Maya Johnson, the woman who fought back, and why it matters." The piece was thoughtful, compassionate, and honest. Natalie had captured Maya's words perfectly, highlighting not just the parking lot incident but the larger issues of prejudice, intimidation, and the strength it takes to stand up for yourself. Within hours, the article went viral. Messages poured in, comments, emails, DMs, from people all over the country. Some shared their own stories of facing discrimination and intimidation. Others praised Maya for her courage. "I cried reading this. I've been there, and I never had the strength to fight back. Thank you for showing us we can. Maya, you are a role model for my daughters." Your strength is inspiring. This article should be shared everywhere. People need to understand what real courage looks like. Of course, there were still detractors, people twisting the narrative, blaming Maya for overreacting. But this time, she didn't let their words weigh her down. For every negative comment, there were 10 voices lifting her up, reminding her that her story mattered. A few days later, Maya received an invitation from a prominent women's empowerment group. They were hosting a virtual panel about standing up against injustice and wanted her to be one of the speakers. At first, the idea terrified her. Public speaking had never been her thing. But Jasmine pushed her, as best friends do. You've already done the hard part, Maya. You lived it. Now tell people about it. So she said yes. The panel. On the night of the panel, Maya sat in front of her laptop, heart hammering as the event went live. Hundreds of people were tuned in, their little profile pictures blinking across the screen. Other women on the panel shared their own stories, survivors, fighters, voices of strength. When it was Maya's turn to speak, she took a deep breath and looked straight into the camera. I never wanted to be in the spotlight, she began. I never imagined that standing up for myself in a parking lot would become a story. But here we are. And I'm sharing it not because I want attention, but because I want to remind you all of something important: you are not powerless. When someone tries to make you feel small, whether it's with words, actions, or their prejudice, you don't have to accept it. You don't have to shrink yourself to make others comfortable. You have the right to stand tall. To speak. To fight back, however you need to. My story isn't just about me. It's about every woman who's been cornered, insulted, or silenced. We are stronger than they think. And our strength will always be louder than their hate. The chat lit up with messages of support. Maya's words hung in the air, resonating deeply with every person watching. She had taken what was meant to tear her down and turned it into a rallying cry. When the panel ended, Maya sat back in her chair, tears welling in her eyes. Not from sadness, but from something bigger. Pride. She had spoken her truth. And in doing so, she had found her power. The transformation. The morning sunlight streamed through Maya's apartment window, golden and warm. She sat curled on the couch with a cup of tea, her laptop open in front of her. It had been 2 weeks since the panel, and the ripple effects of her story were still growing. Her inbox was overflowing, not just with support, but with opportunities she'd never imagined. Schools, universities, advocacy groups, and community organizations had reached out, asking her to speak or share her experience. News outlets continued to cover the story, but this time, the headlines had shifted. Maya Johnson, how one woman's courage became a movement. Maya stared at her screen, her fingers poised above the keyboard as she scrolled through the messages. People from all walks of life had written to her, women, men, young and old, from countries she'd only seen on maps. Each message carried a piece of someone else's pain, their struggles, their gratitude for her courage. Dear Maya, I saw your video and read your interview. I've been through something similar, but I froze. I didn't fight back. I felt so ashamed for a long time, but your story reminded me that I'm not weak. I'm just human. Thank you for your strength. Aisha, 27. Maya. My daughter showed me your panel discussion, and I just want to say how proud I am of you. My generation didn't always know how to fight back. Seeing young women like you stand tall gives me hope. Margaret, 63. Every message was a reminder that Maya's actions had touched lives far beyond what she could see. She had never wanted to be a role model, but life, it seemed, had other plans. As she sipped her tea, her phone rang. It was Jasmine. Good morning, Maya the motivator. Jasmine teased, her voice filled with pride. Don't start with me, Maya laughed softly, though she couldn't help but smile. I'm serious. Did you see that article about you today? The one with the headline "One slap heard around the world"? Girl, you're famous now. Famous for slapping someone, Maya replied, shaking her head. What a legacy. Jasmine's tone grew softer, more serious. No, you're famous for standing up for yourself. For speaking out. For being brave enough to tell your story so others could find theirs. You don't see it yet, but you've started something bigger than you realize. Maya leaned back, thinking about her best friend's words. Had she started something? At first, the attention had been overwhelming, even frightening. But now it felt different. This wasn't about a slap anymore. This was about the power of choosing not to shrink. About standing tall, even when the world tried to push you down. The invitation. Later that day, as Maya scrolled through her emails, one particular subject line made her freeze. TEDx conference invitation, your story matters. Her heart raced as she clicked the message. The organizers of a prominent TEDx event had seen her story and wanted her to deliver a talk at their next conference. The email read, Dear Maya Johnson, your story has sparked conversations across the country about standing up to injustice, reclaiming dignity, and finding strength in the face of adversity. We believe your voice could inspire thousands more on our stage. Please consider joining us to share your journey. Maya's hands trembled as she read the words. TEDx? Me? She closed the laptop and stared at the wall for a long time. Speaking at a local panel had been one thing, but this was global. The doubts crept in again. What if I mess up? What if I'm not good enough? She remembered how terrified she'd been when she slapped that man, how much she'd doubted herself afterward. And yet, she had done it. She had faced him. She had faced the world. What's the worst that could happen? She thought. With a deep breath, Maya opened the email and typed out a reply. I would be honored. The TEDx stage. The conference hall buzzed with energy. Hundreds of faces watched the stage, eager and expectant. Maya stood in the wings, clutching her note cards tightly. Her heart pounded in her chest like a drum, but Jasmine's words echoed in her mind. You're not just telling your story. You're giving other people permission to tell theirs. The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers. Please welcome, Maya Johnson. Applause erupted as Maya stepped onto the stage, her heels clicking against the polished wood. The bright lights were blinding, but she focused on the crowd, taking a deep breath. She began to speak, her voice steady and calm. 2 months ago, I was just a woman trying to make it through another long day. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't looking to be a symbol. I just wanted to park my car, buy some groceries, and go home. But life doesn't always go as planned. That day, someone tried to take my dignity away with one slap. And without thinking, I slapped back. Not because I wanted violence, but because I wanted him to know he couldn't break me. That moment went viral. Millions of people saw it. Some judged me. Some supported me. But the truth is, that slap was bigger than me. It was about something we all face, the choice to stay silent or stand up when someone crosses the line. Every one of us has been in a moment where we felt small, afraid, or unseen. But you don't have to shrink to make others comfortable. Your voice matters. Your dignity matters. You matter. The room fell silent as Maya spoke. She told the crowd about the man's words, how they had cut deeper than his slap. She spoke about the aftermath, the doubt, the fear, and the overwhelming support she had received. And then she spoke about strength. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's standing tall, despite the fear. It's knowing your worth when someone tries to take it away. And it's realizing that your story, no matter how small it seems, can change someone else's life. Maya's voice quivered slightly as she delivered her final words. To everyone who has ever been made to feel less than, stand tall. You are stronger than you know. And your strength can be the light someone else needs to find their own. The audience erupted into applause. Maya blinked, overwhelmed by the standing ovation in front of her. Tears pooled in her eyes, but this time, they were tears of triumph. She had faced her fears. She had owned her story. And now, her voice was helping others find theirs. Epilogue, the movement. Months later, Maya sat in her apartment surrounded by letters from women, students, and strangers who had heard her story. Some thanked her. Others shared their own struggles. Her life had changed in ways she never imagined. She had become a voice for empowerment, speaking at schools, conferences, and community events. But for Maya, the most rewarding part was knowing that her story had sparked a movement, one of strength, courage, and resilience. One afternoon, as she walked through the park, Maya saw a young girl wearing a t-shirt that read, "Stand tall. Speak loud. Be brave." Maya smiled, her heart full. This is only the beginning.